I used to think I was lucky to have a neighbor like Sarah. For 3 years, she was the picture of perfection. Kind, polite, always smiling when we crossed paths. She knew everyone in the neighborhood, always lending a hand, always showing up when someone needed help. At first, I found her warmth comforting. In a quiet street where most people kept to themselves, having someone like Sarah made the place feel alive. But over time, I began to realize Sarah knew too much about me. She knew what kind of wine my wife preferred. She knew my work schedule. She even mentioned personal things I had never told anyone. Once, she asked if my wife and I had made up after last night's argument. But that argument had happened after midnight, behind closed doors with no windows open. I laughed it off then, told myself she must have just guessed. But the coincidences didn't stop. They grew. One night, I looked out the window and saw her standing in her living room. The lights were off. She wasn't moving, just standing there, staring at my house. When I waved, she didn't wave back. She just smiled. I tried to forget about it. I told myself people get lonely sometimes. Maybe she was just looking out at the rain like I often did. But deep down, something felt wrong. Weeks later, while cleaning out the basement to turn it into a guest room, I found an old wooden chest tucked behind some boxes. The lock was rusted, but the fingerprints in the dust looked fresh. I pried it open. Inside was a small black notebook, damp with its edges warped from age. The first page read, "Property of Sarah Miller." I turned the page. The handwriting was messy, uneven, and the dates at the top of each entry made my stomach tighten. Those diary entries were written months before I ever moved into this house. I couldn't stop reading. At first, I told myself it was just curiosity, a harmless peek into someone else's thoughts. But the more I turned the pages, the harder it became to breathe. The first few entries were simple, almost mundane. The new family next door moved in today. They seem nice. I hope they last longer than the last ones. That line. I hope they last longer. It didn't make sense. Then came the one that froze my blood. I saw him today and he smiled at me. He doesn't realize how long I've been waiting for him. I checked the date again. It was written nearly 6 months before I moved in. Before she could have possibly known me. Every entry after that grew darker. Short, fragmented sentences that felt more like observations than diary notes. He stays up late. Sometimes she cries in the kitchen. They argued again, the same way the Hendersons did. It's almost time. The final entry was dated 2 days before I found the book. It read, "Tonight I make my move. They'll never see it coming." I dropped the diary. My hands were shaking. For a long moment, I just stood there in the basement, listening to the faint hum of the boiler, the quiet dripping from a leaky pipe. I wanted to believe it was a sick joke, that maybe the dates were wrong or maybe someone was trying to scare me. But deep down, I knew the handwriting was hers, Sarah's. I looked toward the ceiling, toward her house next door, and for the first time, I wondered if she was up there, watching me even now. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow moving across the curtains felt alive. And when I finally dared to look outside, her living room light flicked on. She was standing by the window, smiling, like she already knew I had found her secret. I didn't go to work the next morning. I told my wife I wasn't feeling well. But the truth was I couldn't stop thinking about what I had read. The Hendersons. The name appeared several times in Sarah's diary, almost like a warning I didn't understand. So I started digging. At first, it was just a search online, old property records, neighborhood forums, anything that mentioned this house or the Hendersons. But the deeper I looked, the stranger it became. According to the town's records, the Henderson family had lived here before us, a couple with 2 young children. But there was no record of them selling the house. No forwarding address, no contact information, just gone. Their car had been found abandoned a few miles away, keys still inside, doors unlocked. The police ruled it as possible voluntary disappearance. But that didn't make sense. Who leaves behind toys, clothes, family photos, everything, and without a word? That night, when my wife went to bed, I went back down to the basement. The smell hit me first. Faint, metallic, like rust mixed with damp earth. I thought it was the pipes again, until I noticed the wall. One section of concrete looked newer than the rest, slightly lighter in color, smoother. like it had been patched recently. I ran my hand across it. The surface was cold and the chill went straight into my bones. For a moment I thought I heard something behind it, a soft scrape, or maybe just my mind playing tricks. I couldn't stop thinking about what Sarah had written. They lasted 3 years. We'd been here for 3 years and 3 months. When I went back upstairs, I saw her porch light still on across the street. She was standing there again, arms folded, watching my house, like she was waiting for me to realize something she already knew. And for the first time, I started to believe that the Hendersons didn't move away. They were still here. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine, not after what I found in that basement. For days, I avoided Sarah. I stopped waving, stopped answering her cheerful good mornings. But she didn't seem bothered. If anything, she seemed amused. Like she knew I was scared and wanted me to be. I started going through old newspapers at the local library, the kind that smell like dust and mold, pages yellowed with time. I typed in her name, Sarah Miller. Dozens of results came up. Most were harmless. Bake sales, charity events, community newsletters. Until I found one that didn't belong. It was an article from 1987. The headline read, "Local woman. Sarah Miller found dead in her home. Suspect at large." I read it over and over, unable to process what I was seeing. Sarah Miller. Same name, same house number. Dead. The article said her body was discovered by a friend after she'd been missing for days. The main suspect was another woman, Emily Watson, a former tenant from 2 houses down. Emily had vanished right after the murder. The police never found her. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through the archives. And then I found a photo. Black and white, grainy, but clear enough. The woman in the picture wasn't the Sarah I knew, but the woman standing next to her was same eyes, same smile, same faint scar on her left cheek. I leaned back in my chair, my heart pounding. If Sarah Miller died in 1987, then who the hell was living next door to me? When I got home that evening, her porch light was off for the first time in years. Her curtains were drawn tight. But I swear, I saw movement in the shadows behind them. And later that night I found something on my doorstep. A small note written in the same shaky handwriting as the diary. It said only one thing: "You finally found me." After the note appeared on my doorstep, everything changed. I started noticing things I hadn't before. Little details that didn't belong. A window left slightly open when I was sure I'd closed it. A chair in the living room turned just a few inches toward the window. My phone battery draining faster than usual, even when I hadn't touched it all day. At first, I told myself it was paranoia, sleep deprivation, stress. But then I found the second note. It was inside my house. Tucked neatly under my pillow, it said, "You shouldn't have read my diary." I didn't tell my wife. I didn't want to scare her, not yet. But that night, I installed a camera by the front door, another one facing the backyard, just to be safe. I stayed up late watching the live feed on my laptop, eyes heavy, mind numb. At 2:14 a.m., I saw movement. Someone was standing at the edge of the yard, just outside the light from the motion sensor. A woman, still, silent, watching. The feed flickered once, and when it came back, she was gone. The next morning, Sarah waved at me from her porch like nothing had happened. She looked rested, cheerful, like she'd had the best sleep of her life. And when I checked the footage again, that entire minute of video was missing. I tried replacing the cameras. I even hid one inside a vent in the hallway. But every time she found them, I'd come home and find them neatly placed on the kitchen counter, lenses pointing upward, as if to say, "Nice try." That's when I realized the truth. She wasn't just watching me. She wanted me to know she was watching, and somehow, she always knew exactly what I'd done, before I even got home. Sleep became impossible after that. Every creak, every whisper of wind through the house felt deliberate, as if the walls themselves were keeping count of my breaths. I started digging again, this time with purpose. I went back through property, records, old newspaper archives, anything connected to this address. That's when I began to see it. A pattern. Every family that lived here stayed for exactly 3 years and 4 months. No exceptions. Each one left suddenly, without explanation. Some moved away. Others simply couldn't be reached. But the timelines were too perfect. 3 years, 4 months, then silence. And we'd been here 3 years and 3 months. I tried to convince myself it was coincidence. But then I noticed the other houses, the ones close to Sarah's. The same pattern repeated there too. The Hendersons, the Lees, the Porter family, all gone after 3 years and 4 months. All neighbors of Sarah Miller, or whoever she really was. That evening, I went outside to take out the trash. Sarah was standing in her yard pruning roses that didn't need pruning. When she saw me, she smiled. That same small, knowing smile. 3 years, she said softly. Can you believe it's been that long already? I froze. I hadn't told her how long we'd lived here. She turned back to her garden, humming to herself, an old tune I didn't recognize. But when I went back inside, the melody was still playing in my head, and somewhere deep down I realized I'd heard it before. From the diary, the last line of one entry had mentioned it. When the song ends, they'll be gone. That night I woke up to the faint sound of humming through the walls. The same song, soft, sweet, coming from the basement. I didn't want to go back down there. Every part of me screamed to stay away and to move, to burn the place down, to pretend none of this was real. But the humming wouldn't stop. Night after night I heard it through the vents. Soft, rhythmic, almost gentle, and underneath it, something else. A low pulsing sound like breathing behind concrete. My wife said I was imagining things. She couldn't hear it. But I saw the look in her eyes, the kind that says she's starting to be afraid of me. Last night, after she fell asleep, I went down to the basement with a flashlight. The air was heavier than before, wet, metallic. And that smell again, stronger now, thick enough to taste. It wasn't coming from the pipes. The patch of wall I'd noticed before looked darker, the cement almost damp. I knelt down and pressed my hand against it, cold, too cold. Something inside the wall shifted, just slightly. It wasn't my imagination. There was something behind it. I found a hammer and started chipping at the edges. Every strike echoed like a heartbeat. The air filled with dust and the smell of rot. When the first crack opened, a thick, dark fluid seeped out. And that was when I dropped the hammer. I shined the flashlight through the gap. And I saw it, a face, or what was left of one. Sunken eyes, fragments of hair stuck to bone, and cloth that looked like what the Henderson boy had been wearing in the photo I'd seen online. There were more shapes behind it. Too many. I stumbled back, choking, trying not to scream. But before I could run, I heard something behind me. A soft, deliberate step on the basement stairs. I turned. Sarah was standing there. She didn't look surprised. She didn't look angry. She just smiled like she'd been waiting for this moment. "The smell," she said quietly, her voice calm and almost kind. It always gets worse around this time. I didn't tell my wife what I found behind the wall. What could I even say? That our neighbor, the woman who baked us pies and watered our plants, had buried people beneath our home? She wouldn't have believed me. And if she did, she'd never sleep again, so I kept quiet. But I couldn't hide what I'd seen. The smell clung to me. The sound of that voice, Sarah's voice, and whispering behind me in the dark. The next morning, there was a knock at the door. I already knew who it was before I opened it. Sarah stood there, dressed neatly, holding a basket of bread wrapped in a white towel. Her smile was calm, almost maternal. "I've been meaning to invite you and your wife over," she said. "Dinner tonight, just us, to celebrate 3 wonderful years of being neighbors." 3 years. Exactly. My throat tightened. I wanted to slam the door, to scream that I knew what she'd done. But instead I smiled back. Of course we'd come. She nodded like she'd been expecting that answer. Her eyes flicked briefly toward the basement door behind me, just for a second, before she turned and walked away. I stood there for a long time after she left, gripping the doorknob, trying to breathe. There was no doubt anymore, she knew. She'd always known. That night I prepared everything quietly. I hid my phone in my jacket pocket and turned on the recorder. I packed a small bag, car keys, cash, passports, just in case. And before we left for her house, I slipped a kitchen knife into my coat sleeve. My wife thought I was being paranoid. She didn't understand. But when we stepped out into the rain, Sarah was already standing at her door, waving at us through the window. The table was set when we arrived. Candles, wine glasses, and the smell of almonds, and faint but unmistakable. The smell of almonds was stronger once we stepped inside, sweet, bitter, heavy in the air. My wife didn't notice. She was smiling politely, complimenting the table setting, the candles, the perfectly folded napkins. Sarah's house looked normal, but too normal. Everything in its place, every surface spotless, except for one thing. The photos on the wall, they weren't just of her. They were of us, smiling in our yard, walking to the mailbox. Even one through the kitchen window, my wife cooking dinner, completely unaware. I felt my stomach turn. Sarah noticed my gaze and laughed softly. "Oh, I like to capture memories," she said. "People come and go so fast in this neighborhood." She poured the wine before I could answer. The same deep red from the diary entry I couldn't stop replaying in my mind. They drank the wine. It was faster that way. I watched the liquid swirl in my glass and the faintest shimmer on the surface. It smelled exactly like almonds. She raised her own glass, smiling warmly. "To new beginnings," she said. My wife smiled and lifted hers. I hesitated. My throat tightened. Sarah's eyes flicked to me. Her smile never wavered. I pretended to drink, let the wine touch my lips, then tilted the glass just enough for it to spill into the napkin on my lap. My hands were shaking. I hoped she didn't notice. She set her glass down and leaned back in her chair, studying me. "Something wrong?" she asked, voice calm, polite, but her eyes were hungry. "No," I said softly. "It's perfect." For the next few minutes we ate in silence. My wife chatted about the weather. Sarah laughed at all the right moments, but I could feel her watching me between every word, every breath. Then my wife started coughing, softly at first, then harder. Her wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Sarah's smile widened. She turned to me and whispered, almost tenderly, "I told you not to read the diary." My wife's eyes went wide. She tried to breathe, but no sound came out, only a soft wheeze, a faint gurgle. Her fingers clawed at her throat. The plate shattered when she fell. "Sarah," I screamed. "What did you—" But she was already standing, still smiling, her voice calm as ever. She shouldn't have read it either. I lunged at her, knocked the table aside, wine spilling across the floor like blood. She moved faster than I expected, sidestepping, pulling something from behind her apron. A knife, small, silver, glinting under candlelight. I stumbled back, grabbed the chair, and threw it between us. The wood splintered against the wall. "Why?" I shouted. "Why us?" She tilted her head. "Because you came here," she said softly. "Because you listened." Then she lunged. I barely dodged. The blade grazed my arm, hot pain, shallow but sharp. I shoved her away and ran. The hallway felt endless. Every shadow moving, every sound screaming. My wife was still on the floor, unmoving. I wanted to go back. I couldn't. I burst through the back door and into the rain, cold, blinding, my shoes slipping in the mud. Behind me, the creak of the door, then the soft tap of bare feet on wet concrete. "Come back," she called, her voice lilting like a lullaby. "You can't leave now. You opened the wall." I didn't look back. I ran across the yard, through the garden, over the fence. Branches tore at my jacket. My lungs burned, then silence. No footsteps, no voice, just rain. I reached the car and threw myself inside, slamming the door shut. Keys. Where were the keys? They weren't in my pocket. I froze. Something was moving in the back seat. I didn't dare look. My hand froze on the ignition. Then I saw it in the rearview mirror. A smile. Too wide, too calm. "Going somewhere?" she whispered. I screamed and threw the door open, stumbling into the rain again. I ran toward the house and my brain screaming, why there? Why back? But I didn't have anywhere else to go. The neighbors' lights were off. Every window was black. Every house dead. When I got inside, I slammed the door and locked it, except the lock was already broken. The realization hit like ice in my veins. She'd been here. She'd been here long before dinner. Every door I tried, unlocked. Every window latch, loose. She had keys. Then I heard the footsteps again. Slow. Careful. Upstairs. I grabbed the nearest thing, a wrench, and crept up the stairs, each step groaning like it was warning me to turn back. At the top of the stairs, my phone buzzed. A message, unknown number. You left the wine unfinished. I dropped the phone, then her voice came from behind me. Calm, almost kind. You shouldn't run in your own house. I swung the wrench. Hit something. Maybe the wall, maybe her. I don't know. The lights flickered. When they came back on, she was gone. But every door upstairs was open now. Every room empty, except one. The basement door. It was open just an inch, swaying slightly as if someone had just gone down. And from below came the smell. Rot, damp, metal. I knew what waited there. I knew I had to go. Because that's where she wanted me. And somehow I couldn't stop myself. I descended one trembling step at a time, wrench slick in my hand. The air grew heavier, and from the dark below her voice floated up soft, almost playful. I've been waiting for you to see the truth. The basement smelled like rust and rot. Each step creaked under my weight, echoing too loud, like the house itself was listening. The light bulb above me flickered, once, twice, and then went dark. Only the glow of my phone lit the room. And in that pale blue light, I saw them. Bodies, not whole, fragments, shapes behind the old drywall, covered in plastic, some small, some too small. I couldn't breathe. Then I saw her, standing near the furnace, motionless, the knife still in her hand. You weren't supposed to find them, she said. Her tone wasn't angry, it was sad. What are you? I asked. Her smile flickered like the dying bulb above us. Something that can't stop. She stepped closer, the knife glinting. You broke the cycle. Now it has to start again. Behind her I saw it. The pipe. The one I'd been meaning to fix for months. The faint hiss of leaking gas filled the air. And suddenly, I understood. I took a step back. Then another. She tilted her head. Are you scared, dear? No, I said quietly. Not anymore. I pulled the lighter from my pocket, the one I always used for candles during storms. Her smile faded for the first time. You wouldn't, she whispered. I flicked the lighter open. The tiny flame wavered. The smell of gas thickened, swirling between us. I already did. Her eyes widened, and in that moment I saw something break behind them. Not fear, recognition, like she'd been here before. The flame touched the air, and everything went white. When the smoke cleared, the house was gone. They found me 3 blocks away, half-conscious, lungs filled with smoke, arm broken. They said there was only one body in the basement. A woman. Unrecognizable. But that night, while I lay in the hospital bed, I heard it again, faint, steady, tapping against the window pane. Rain, and under it, a voice. You can't kill what's already dead. They told me the fire burned for 6 hours, that it spread faster than it should have. Like the air itself wanted the house gone. The police found 47 bodies. Some buried under the floorboards, others walled behind concrete. The oldest dated back to the 1960s. Entire families. Names that no one remembered until now. At first, they thought Sarah Miller was the killer. But her dental records didn't match the remains. Then came the impossible part. Sarah Miller died in 1987. I stared at the file for hours, trying to make sense of it. Same house, same street, same smile. Different century. The detective showed me photos from old newspapers, grainy black and white pictures of a woman named Emily Watson. A nurse convicted of multiple murders. She'd disappeared after escaping a psychiatric facility 38 years ago. Her face was almost identical to Sarah's. Almost. They called it a coincidence. A copycat. But I knew better, because the handwriting in the old diary, the one I found in my basement, matched the notes the detectives recovered from the ashes. Same loops, same slanted S, same signature. And at the bottom of every page, beneath the dust and burn marks, were the same 5 words written over and over again. They never really leave me. 2 weeks after the fire, a woman from the archives called me. She said she'd found something that didn't fit. An old psychiatric evaluation from 1987. Emily Watson's last recorded session. Her voice on the tape was calm, steady, like she was the one interviewing the doctor. They all come to me, she said. Families, lonely ones, broken ones. I only take what's already dying. The doctor asked what she meant. There was a pause. Then you wouldn't understand. I'm not the first Sarah Miller. I just wear her better. That line chilled me more than anything. Because when they found her first victim, the real Sarah Miller, her body was perfectly preserved. No decay, no blood, just empty eyes. The report said Emily had drained her essence. Not her life, not her soul. Something older, unnamed. And after that, every few decades, someone new moved into that same house. And every time the same woman appeared next door, different name, same smile. The curse wasn't about killing, it was about continuing. Each family was a vessel, each home a stage, each tragedy a rebirth, and somehow I broke the chain. Or maybe I just shifted it. Because last night as I was packing to leave town, I found something on my porch. A diary, new, clean, but the first page was already written, in that same slanted handwriting. You lived, and that's enough. Now let me rest. I should have felt relief. But all I could think about was the final line, faint, almost an afterthought at the bottom of the page. The rain always finds its way home. It's been 6 months since the fire. A new city, a smaller apartment, no basements, no neighbors, at least none I talk to. Sometimes I forget. The smell of smoke, the sound of her voice. Sometimes the rain helps. It drowns everything else out, but not always. The nightmares come less often now. Still, when they do, it's always the same. Her smile across the table, her eyes when the flame caught, her voice whispering through the smoke. You can't kill what's already dead. I tell myself it's just memory, that she's gone, that I'm free. Last week I finally unpacked the last of my boxes. New life, clean start. And for the first time in months I slept without waking in panic until last night. It was the rain that woke me. Soft at first, then heavier. A familiar rhythm against the roof, except my apartment doesn't have a sloped roof. I got up, went to the window. Across the courtyard through the glass I saw movement. The faint glow of a light in the apartment opposite mine. Someone standing there by the window, a woman. She was smiling, and even from this distance I could swear she mouthed something. Welcome home. This morning I checked my mailbox. Inside, wrapped in clear plastic to keep out the rain, was a small leather-bound book, a diary. Blank. Except for the first line, some secrets follow you no matter how far you run.